I hope everybody is having a great day and having fun coding. Today I'm going to talk about when not to use databases. So it seems like so far in the course we've been talking about developing web apps, using databases. So you might come under the belief that, hey, if I'm going to develop a web application, necessarily I better use a database. And there are some cases where that's not the case, that things are simple enough that we might not want to use a database. So there's compelling reasons not to use databases, and I'd like to talk about that in this video. Before I do that, I just need to back up a bit and get to a running start, and that's talking about markup languages. So markup languages, for the most part, are things that we can use in a standard text file. And the beauty of a standard text file is that if I wrote a text file back in '83 or whenever, I can still read that text file today on my newer Mac. Or if I develop that text file on my Mac, I can easily give it to you and it'll look fine on Windows. And there are tons of applications that can open these text files. So if I have Microsoft Word instead and develop something in Word, then there are some programs, so Apple Pages can open it up, but the formatting won't look good. And if I develop something in Microsoft Word in the 1983 version, it's pretty doubtful that that will open today. So text files, in a sense, are the most ideal format we can use. Plus, they're small size-wise. So those are all big pluses. One thing we can do with these text files is mark them up a little bit so they'll look nicer with some other program. So, for example, HTML. So here I have a text file. I put in some little markup language, HTML markup, and then I can render that document. That document's right here. If I double click it, it comes up. There's my header, there's my second header, a paragraph, and so on. So it's really pretty straightforward. And if I write tons of stuff here, if I write paragraphs and paragraphs of stuff, this is pretty readable in the text file, not a problem when I create it. And when I want to show it to people, it can look a little bit more interesting. So Google here, this page looks a little more complex, but not that much more complex than this stuff.html. And if we look at its text file that supports it, in the theoretical sense, I guess, if we could say, well, it's human readable, I mean, we can read it and it's a text file, but in practice, or the practical aspect is, it's kind of unreadable. I mean, we can't really tell what's going on with this file. And even if we look at UMW, let's do that right quick, it's the same thing. So if I, let me see if I can get to a place where I can view the source. You can see some information, but man, this is not readable anymore, pretty much. So we've kind of lost some of the benefits of the markup language. So now all of a sudden, this is easy to edit and makes sense, and we're just adding little tags. This is more complex. And this complexity has grown and grown. For example, I was filling out an application to use some NASA technology. So they have their application as a Word document. So I took that Word document, I opened it in LibreOffice in Ubuntu, added paragraphs and paragraphs it took me forever to write. I'm not really that good of a writer of those types of things. So it took forever to write this stuff, saved it as a docx, sent it over to Provost Morello, who needed to add his own stuff, the university financials, signatures of various types. And he wrote back and said, Ron, I cannot open your file. Whatever program you used to fill it out isn't playing nicely with my word processing application. So I thought, I screwed up. Something happened. Maybe I saved it in LibreOffice format instead of docx. So I went to my Ubuntu machine, tried to open it. It wouldn't open. Here it is. It's this arrow pod. If I try to open it in Pages, same thing. This evaluation license application, that's the name of the document, not an application, can't be opened for some reason. So I thought, okay, I'm going to uncompress this docx. Inside that docx was this one, there's many files in there. One of them is this document XML. I thought initially that perhaps I can edit this document, fix the error, and then re-zip it and things would work nicely. But that didn't work, which I'll show you in a second. Give me a sec. So that's what that document looked like. And I worked for a while in fixing errors. There were lots of them, but I could never get it to open. And if you look at, so my next step was to try to find my text and just cut and paste it from this document into a new one. But that was problematic because things are spread out. So there's some text for participating in, I don't know where this is. There's a 4, so there must be something ahead of it with applicant will charge the students of, there's that bit. So even the text is kind of interspersed with all this awful markup language. So sometimes it's not a good idea to use things that have lots and lots of markup that make things unreadable. So about a year ago, I had this job where I had to write some document, and they required that I do it in Markdown language, which is a type of markup language. And I resisted for a long time. I never saw the purpose of it. But after about a month, I was a convert to Markdown, the Markdown format. And I use it for everything. So when I'm reading a book and taking notes, I use it. This is just some playing around I did. So this is a plain text file. It doesn't look plain because they on the screen format it. This is just one of the there are many, many editors you can use for it, including all text editors. But if you want to have something as a header, it's these double hash marks. You can create formulas that render really nicely on the render side. So this is where I'm editing the document on the left. This is how it renders on the right. So some really cool stuff you can do. Now let me just show you another free one. It's this Closier, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And here you can see I have a fair amount of stuff. So this is where all my notes, when I'm doing these talks, I put a lot of them in here. So again, you can see that there's what I'm typing. It's coming out nicely. If I wanted a bulleted list, you can see it's just these asterisks coming up that I'm typing on the left, and it's rendering pretty nicely on the right. If I wanted a numbered list, I just start with a number, foo, and it foo2. So these on this side is just a plain text file. There's also a lot of editors for various operating systems. Byword I happen to like. This is how I type out a table. It's pretty straightforward, really, once you learn it. And it renders like this. So when you look at GitHub README pages that look a little formatted, it's in this Markdown language. If you ever work with Python notebooks like we did in the data mining class, those are Markdown documents. So Markdown's really kind of taken over as a really great way to do this markup. And as you can see, it's still pretty easy to read on the left here. That is, the byword's a little easier to do. You can still make it out. It's just simple text editing, and it's a great technology. Doing things in text-only documents is cool. A lot of people do it, including famous authors. I just wanted to point out this guy, Neil Stephenson. This must be the first really fantastic cyberpunk novel, Snow Crash. If you haven't read it, you probably should. But he does everything first in longhand with a fountain pen, where these documents end up being, feet-high piles of paper. Then he types everything in using Emacs editor. So even writers, people who make their living writing, don't use things like Microsoft Word or things along those lines, but strictly text-only documents. We'll see how this plays into my main topic in a second. The second thing I wanted to bring up is dynamic websites. That's what we've been building all along, things that we grab stuff from a database and render it in HTML. So like Amazon is a prime example here. So it knew that I was apparently looking at yoga blocks. That's true. I will admit that. And it renders this page. So this page I'm getting, it even says hi Ron and all this other stuff, is unique to me and my search history and things that it thinks I might be interested in. And your page will be completely different. So this is a very dynamic website. If I go to Huffington Post, it's similar. That we see all this stuff is being generated from a database and rendered in HTML on this page. So it could be, it's not, I'm pretty convinced, but the odds are good that it's not Flask and Postgres. But it could be that we could write a Flask app that would do this sort of thing. That every time someone visits the page, off we'd go, our Flask app would run, we'd grab stuff from a database, display it here, it'd look fantastic. Now the problem with that approach is that some place like the Huffington Post or the New York Times, all these things where the content changes throughout the day, they get something like, 4 million unique visitors a day. And so 4 million times a day, we'd be rendering this page. We'd be grabbing stuff from the database, rendering it on this page. You can see that's an awful lot of processing power involved in creating these dynamic sites. Instead, what we might do is get together, talk things out, say, we only need to really update it every minute. It doesn't have to be every visitor dynamically generating this page. Every minute's good enough. So every minute we'd run our Flask app. It would grab stuff from our Postgres database, create these HTML files. Then we'd cache these HTML files. So when someone would visit the page within that minute, they would get the cached version. We wouldn't be executing Flask. We wouldn't be executing Postgres. It'd be it would place less of a load on our system if we did that. So that's how these sites usually work. We have some agreed upon, how often do we need to generate this site? We generate it every minute, every 5 minutes or whatever. Visitors are getting the cached version. That's one way of dealing with this dynamic problem. There's another problem that's slightly unrelated, but still relates to dynamic content, and that is smaller sites. Sites like the one you might make with Domain of One's Own. So that runs on WordPress using PHP and MySQL, and every time someone visits those pages, they're dynamically generated. So that puts a load on the system. And that's true on my site, zaharsky.org. It's an old school site running WordPress using PHP and MySQL. And every time someone visits my site, it gets dynamically generated from the MySQL database. So all these entries here, they're all in these databases. And this is crazy. This is really not the way to go. And it's particularly crazy if we're trying to run our site on a small server like this Amazon EC2 Nano instance that I talked about last time. This would be not the way to go. So a recent surge of interest is in having static site generators. So it's sort of like compiling. So we make a change to the data, to our website, our content. We sort of compile it, the equivalent of compiling. That creates a bunch of static files, these HTML files, that we can serve. And it's much more efficient for these small servers. And a lot of developers on their personal sites, on their blogs, are using this approach. So it's kind of a cool approach to use. And tying these two themes together, one approach that's used, a very common one, is to use Markdown to create content that then is generated into HTML pages. And that's what I'd like to show you. So let me do that. So let me, sorry for that transition. Sites, I think. All right, cool. Oh no. Let's see if my Vagrant machine is running. I'm not sure. Yep, it is. All right. And I'm pretty sure I don't, let me just check that I don't have what I want to. All right, so I don't have Jekyll installed, and that's the one I wanted to show you. And I just wanted to, the reason I'm on this virtual machine is just to show you how easy it is to install. So I can go sudo apt-get install Jekyll. And that's it. So now I can do any command I want to in Jekyll. I'm going to go back into my Mac side in a second, but I just wanted to show you that installation is generally pretty easy. There are some dependencies like Ruby, Node.js, things along those lines, but for the most part, it's a fairly easy install. But let me show you what is involved with that. All right, so here I am in my Jekyll, in a website directory that contains source files. Let me get one of them here. Let me go into posts. I guess that might be the easiest way to show you. And this is my Zen site. So let me open this maybe.md. Give me just 1 second here. And as you can see, when I type in this is a blog post I'm doing, and it looks pretty simple. There are a few odds and ends that this style uses, like this margin note, but for the most part, it's fairly readable. Even links are, let me get a link here. I think there's one on the top. So it's here. Well, I'll just write a link. So it'd be whatever the text is of the link, and then here would be the URL. So that's the syntax. So you can see it's a pretty easy syntax. Sorry for that barking dog problem. To go. So I create a site using things like that. I have a style associated with it. So there's some CSS. There's tons of templates that are these Jekyll templates that you can just get off the web. And let me go back to my main page here. And to build the site, I can just go Jekyll. And I've built the site. And what happens is all these source files, all these Markdown language text files get converted to HTML. So if I go to my sites directory here, so all these here are the ones that are getting rendered. So if I look at, whoops, I should have, you can see that everything I had in that Markdown text gets paragraphs around it, iframes, all sorts of things that I don't have to worry about. I just have to write content. Oops, let's cancel that. I can look at the site locally by going Jekyll serve. And it's just like everything here, like we've been doing. There's this little address I can look at. And there's how my site looks locally. So a reasonable format, I'm not really great at design, and even with altering templates, this looks suspiciously like my other Markdown site, that guide-to-datamining.com site. This is also a Jekyll Markdown site. So things don't change often. When I make a change, I do the equivalent of compiling, which is that Jekyll build command, and it generates these HTML files. So it makes for a much faster site on the same hardware. Oops. All right. All right, let's save this. Maybe. All right, so the htdocs I don't need. So breath, it should be some images here. All right, so I'm gonna git add. Sorry, I just need to do, I just wanted to show you what it would be like then to I don't want to commit everything, so that's why I'm doing it this method. Whoop. All right. Let me just look again. Okay, and I need 2 post breaths and maybe, I think. Oh, and config. Oh, no. All right. Sorry, I don't remember the date. 2016. All right. Just checking to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, I think that's it. Let me just do git status again. Okay, I don't need those. All the things in htdocs are generated. All right, that looks great. All right, so now I'm going to commit those. And I'm going to push them to my repository. All right, so I was able to write these in Markdown. I'm able to, on my local machine, to have a look at what they look like before I make the commit. I committed it to GitHub. Now I'm going to log into my server. And now let me change directory to my Compassionate Path site. All right, so now the only thing I need to do is git pull to grab the changes from the server. I'm gonna, sorry, my dogs are interested in something. I'll build the site. And now I can go to Compassionate Path. And I get my site up. So you can see it's really quick transition to be writing stuff and then putting it live on the website just using Git. For that little hiccup and delay, my dogs were barking and I had to kind of entertain them a bit. Now they're laying down again, so hopefully I'm good. So this is really cool. I really like this way of doing things. You know, I always am kind of embarrassed by Zaharsky.org because it's kind of old school PHP, MySQL, and this is what the cool kids use, this Jekyll, and it's really easy to do. And I like the convenience of it. It's very simple. It kind of fits my style. This text is really just, you know, typing in a straight text document, as you saw. I think I still have that up. There it is. As you can see, you know, it's just, I'm not distracted by, you know, doing fancy formatting or anything or worrying about it. I just generate this file and I'm good. So that's cool, but there's something even cooler that I'd like to show you. And here it is. So I'm in a different directory, foo, and let me just serve this one up. This one I just wanted to show you that there's different styles. There's certainly a lot to choose from, and I'm really bad at design, so don't take this as being the coolest way to go. But it's a little, I took it from some other theme, and I just wanted to show you that, you know, editing, doing math is very straightforward in this, and adding huge code blocks is also pretty easy. Let me just open that really quickly just to show you that that's true. I think it was called foo and under post. So let me do the code one for you first. And even though this is highlighted by the editor, this code block, the only requirement was that I indented it a little bit. It understood all that as code and, you know, did it in that monospace font. So that was fairly easy to do. Let me show you the formulas. The formulas are a little more complex, but they're fast to learn. You know, I just have absolutely no problem learning them, and they look good when they're rendered. I even rendered them in more professional type journal article kind of documents, and they look good. I think it's this one. So this is LaTeX. So if you do TeX or LaTeX formatting, it's the same. So if you know that, it's pretty straightforward to do this. So that's how I generate this. So I use Jekyll build. It takes those Markdown files, converts them to HTML that I can serve up on a static site. So what is extremely cool about this, and let me do that. Let me shut this down. And so, okay, so let me create a Git repository here. All right, so I have that repository. Let me go to GitHub here, make a repository, and this has to be of a specific name. It has to be your login name to GitHub, which is this Zaharsky. For me, it's Zaharsky, and then the next has to be github.io. So there's a kind of a required name here for this. I'll create this repository. Oops, wrong place. Okay, and let me push that. All right, this sometimes takes a minute or so, but let's go ahead and see if this actually works. So I'm going to go to Zaharsky at github.io. Yeah, looks good. And there you see my website. So that it's GitHub, using GitHub as a free web hosting service. And that's really pretty cool thing. Lots of people seem to do it. And this isn't a bad address. If you wanted to, you can also link, you buy a domain name for $10 from somewhere and link it to the GitHub repository. So it doesn't have to be zaharsky.github.io. I could change it. I could move my zaharsky.org to point to this page. So that's really cool. So it's a kind of a free, as long as you use Jekyll or just plain HTML, you can use GitHub as a way of hosting your website. And a number of people do. And you can see you can have blog posts. It can look pretty dynamic. You do generate it. It's sort of a pre-compile site. But this is really a cool way to advertise and what you can do. Maybe kind of explain what some of your repositories are. You can do a wide variety of things in a very simple way. So that's where I wanted to end this video. Hope that was helpful. Sorry about if you heard any dogs barking in the making of this video. I apologize for that. Take care. Have a great day. Okay, I thought I'd show you right quick how to connect your domain name to the GitHub Pages account. So let's do that. So let me go to my domain hosting site, hover.com. Look at my domains. And the one I want to do is guide-to-datascience.com. It's one that I don't have connected at the moment to anything. So temporarily, let's do that. And what should I do first? So I need to add a file to my GitHub repository. So let me do that first. I'm going to name my file CNAME. And I'm going to guide to datascience.com. Let's see if that's actually what it is. Guide to datascience.com. So that looks good. Create CNAME. That looks good. Okay, I'm going to commit the new file. See if I have it here. CNAME. Cool. All right, so that's step one. Make that CNAME. Now the next thing I need to do is add some entries here. So I'm going to add to A records. Let's do that here. And that one's going to be 192.30.252. 53. These are the same for all these GitHub blog or user pages. Okay, so we have 2 of those. Hopefully that'll work. And let's see if this part works. Okay, that didn't propagate yet. Let's see if let me go open a new window here. Oh, it was pretty instant. So that was fairly fast. So I just showed how to connect this Guide to Data Science to my GitHub pages. So what I did to repeat and to summarize is I created this CNAME file. The only thing in that CNAME file was one line that listed my domain name that I wanted to use. So that was on the GitHub side. On the hover or on your domain name registration page, your editing page, I created 2 A records pointing to these 2 GitHub IP addresses. And within a matter of seconds was able to get guide2datascience.com pointing to my GitHub page, which is really cool. And as you can see, it'd be really easy to add blog posts and do things along those lines. Hope that helped. Have a great day. Bye.